Hello there everyone, it's Cassie and welcome back for another Trinity Stamps video. Today we're going to be making a fall card. Let's talk about what we're using first. We have the Simply Sentimental Special Stamps and Die. And you guys know how I feel about these Simply Sentimentals, and this one's awesome. So many great occasions for that. We're also bringing in the Cake Layers Stencil. This coordinates beautifully with the Cut the Cake die. I'm not going to be using the Cut the Cake die. We're just going to be using the stencil today, but the versatility of this is incredible. If you've seen this at all, people have done some really great things with it. I want to put a fall vibe on it. So I have a couple of different embellishments here. We have the itty bitty black stars, and we also have some crunchy leaves. We have some different pastes that we're going to be using, some sprays and inks, and we're going to have a good time making this background. I do have a piece of black mixed media card because I wasn't sure exactly how much water or anything I wanted to use on this or how wet I wanted it to get. So we're going to use this black mixed media card. It measures 4¼ by 5½ inches. I've put this down onto a grip mat. We're going to be using some mint tape just to cover up parts of the stencil. Should have put some down at the bottom. I will eventually, just not before I make a little bit of a mistake, but it's fine because I can kind of mess with it and clean it up. I'm going to put a little bit of my Distress Oxide Antique Linen down on my glass mat, and I am going to use one of my little sidekicks for this. I'm putting it on the mat just because I figured that would be a little bit easier. Now you don't want to mix your oxides with your distress inks because that can contaminate, and so sometimes it's just the best to put it down onto the glass mat or another surface and then pick it up from there rather than contaminate your ink pads. But I'm going to make sure I really clean off that Sidekick so I don't have any problems in the future with it. And that was antique linen. Now I put down a little bit more of that mint tape, and then we're going to use some of this solar spray. This is called Golden Hour. It's just like a yellowy look to it, and it goes really well over the top of that antique linen. You can't really see it on the camera, but it does give a bit of a sparkle to what we're doing here. And as you can see, I do have a cat in here. Of course I have a cat in here because I'm using a wet medium and he's not going to move. To be honest, poor Miles wasn't feeling good. He had a whole hospital visit and everything, so I am not going to move him. He just wants to be close. So, all right, I've put everything down onto a magnetic surface because I really want that stencil to stay put. I don't want any leakage underneath the stencil, and I've brought in some paste. That first paste is called Charming, and it is a neon paste, and so I'm just kind of trying to be really careful not to get it on the icing part. I just want it on the cake stand, and so we'll wipe the excess off of our palette, clean off our palette, and then we'll bring in the next color. That next color is actually called Mugshot. It's a beautiful neon orange, and it looks so good on this black paper. So we're going to do that for our icing. And typically, I think, if I were just using regular inks, I would probably have gone with doing the icing and the cake stand first and then did the cake next. But because I wanted these to be the wet medium, I definitely did the cake first. So again, just trying to be careful that I don't mix it over the top of the cake stand. And so we're just kind of blending that over the top. And because this is a wet medium, when I pull this off, I'm going to set it off to the side to dry, up and out of the way so that Miles doesn't put his little paws in it, because I guarantee he would. But we're going to peel that back. You can take a look at how cool that really looks. And it's gorgeous. So we'll set that off to the side. We'll go clean up our mess. And then we will bring in these itty bitty black stars. While this is still wet, I want to put a few stars over the icing. And I'll tell you, from having made the mistake before, it is best to use a tool, like I'm using this spoon here, use a tool that is only going to grab 1 or 2 of those stars or embellishments at a time. The reason for that is if you grab too many, they have a tendency to pile on together. And I really wanted those stars to be dispersed. I didn't want them on top of each other. This is actually the second time I'm doing this card. I'm going to be real with you because I did have such a problem. I got too ambitious and thought I could, knock 1 or 2 off at a time. And no, I ended up with piles, and I definitely didn't want that. So take a look. I am just so happy with how this is coming together. I am going to use my heat tool on a low setting over the top of this to kind of get things to dry a little bit more. I don't need them to be 100% dry just yet, but I do want them to be a little bit more dry. So that's why I'm using the heat tool, and I'm moving that around pretty quickly because I don't want the heat to stay too much on that paste because it will cause the paste to bubble. So we're just kind of moving that around. It's dry-ish. And then we can move on to the next step, which is I want to do some splatter. But this is so cool looking. I love the way it looks. All right, so I'm going to bring in some picket fence paint. It's the white paint that is from Ranger. And I'm going to put a tiny bit of that onto my glass mat. I'm going to spritz just a tiny bit of water in it just to dilute it a little. And then I'll bring in a tiny paintbrush and we'll splatter that all over the background. I'm trying to avoid the cake. I didn't completely avoid it. That's okay. I didn't mind that some of that got on there. But most of that white I want to be around the cake. And I feel like that just does such a good job. And now we're going to set that off to the side to dry, and we'll work on our sentiments. So again, those come from the Simply Sentimental Special stamp set. I am going to bring in the Simply Sentimental Special die as well. But right now I'm stamping each of the words that I want to use. I've got wishing you, we have Anne, then we have extra, and then we have day. Special will go in between extra and day. And I'm stamping those out using a purple ink. And then I'm going to do something really cool with the ink pad. I didn't have a color of cardstock in my stash that would match, so I decided to just make my own. So I'm using that ink pad and putting that right down on some white cardstock. I realized I didn't have enough of it put down, so we're going to add a little bit more. And then we're going to hit that with the heat tool so it's nice and dry. Tiny dies, especially tiny dies, well, all dies, but especially tiny dies, don't work very well if your paper's wet. So we're going to make sure that's nice and dry before we try and run that through our die cutting machine. And then I realized I need to go ahead and cut down all of my words first. So I'm going to use my guillotine trimmer. We're going to trim down all of the words. So day, wishing you, Anne, and extra. And we're going to make those nice and small, but we're just using the guillotine trimmer to trim all of those down. I'm lining that up using not only the clear plate that's in front of it, but on my guillotine trimmer. I do this quite a bit, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. So keep that in mind. And then now we'll run this through our little Scout die cutting machine that I have. Love this thing. It always sits on my desk. So we'll run that through, and then we'll have our background or our shadow piece is white and the word itself is in purple. And don't forget the little dot for your eye in special. Okay, so now I'm going to use some reverse tweezers. We'll just use a little bit of this glue and we'll put little dots of it behind our word, and then we can put that down on top of our shadow. This whole time, obviously, my piece is drying a little bit more. It won't be completely dry by the time I am done with this, so I will hit that with my heat tool. I don't show you that part, but because that white does take a minute to dry, and so I just want to make sure it is really good and dry before I start putting my fingers all over it. Otherwise, you'll make a mess. Ask me how I know. I am notorious for just not being patient when it comes to things being dry. All right, so the word itself is ready. I did trim this piece down. Like I said, it was originally 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I trimmed off about 1/8 of an inch on both of the long sides, so we will have a white border just on the long sides of our card. And I still don't trust that it's completely dry, so I'm trying not to put my fingers all over it, but it is. It's pretty dry. So now we can start putting our words down. And I'm going to use liquid glue to put down, and I'm trying to line this up on my glass mat so things are fairly centered. So we've got wishing you, Anne. And then we will use some foam tape, some foam adhesive for the word special. I want that to stand out a little bit. And then we'll peel off the release paper on those, and we can stick that down in the middle above the cake. And then we can put extra and day on the side using the liquid glue. But I'll tell you what, I love this stencil so much. The versatility is absolutely incredible. Here I've made this fun Halloween card. So wishing you an extra special day. This could be used for any occasion, really. Anything special in the fall. And I love how it turned out. And I hope you do too. If you do, please hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And please be sure to check out all that Trinity Stamps has going on over on their blog, Facebook page, and Instagram for more crafty inspiration. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you soon.